I'm Mike Gridley and welcome to PowerBoat Television. This week on the show we're heading to central Newfoundland to explore the cruising waters of Notre-Dame Bay, but first we're going to stop to pick up a little ice for the cooler. Notre-Dame Bay is one of Canada's undiscovered cruising grounds that is truly a spectacular part of Atlantic Canada. Our cruise started in Little Burnt Bay, one of the many small communities around the bay, with the arrival of Safe Passage, an East Coast built 36-foot trawler. With all of the guests aboard, we headed out of the small fishing harbor with Chris Cuff at the helm.
Well, we just left from Burnt Bay, Little Burnt Bay it's called, and we're getting out towards exploits. And there's a lot of small crooks and crannies in Notre-Dame Bay where we're going to now. Like, we're going to stop along the way and tell you different places, like different names of different communities and stuff. Like out 4 years ago, people fished there.
Notre-Dame Bay is a huge bay that spans 45 miles from Cape St. John to Cape Friels and is comprised of hundreds of miles of shoreline and hundreds of islands, with several bays that provide well-protected waters for cruising boaters. As the gang settled in for a cruise across Exploits Bay, one of the most popular areas in Notre-Dame Bay, Chris pointed out some of the islands frequented by local boaters.
What they call Long Island is, then you got Swan Island. There's a place in Swan Island you can anchor. And this opening we see down here now, coming through, that's over towards Black Island, right straight for this land way on over. Right. That's what you call Black Island. There's places over there you can anchor. Actually, there's a lot of cabins over in Black Island.
One of the things that attracts many visitors to the bay in the spring and early summer are the icebergs that drift down from Greenland. And as luck would have it, we had the chance to get up close and personal with an iceberg en route to Exploits. Moving in closer, we launched the dinghy so Don Manuel and his son could gather some iceberg water and ice. Being this close to an iceberg, we were told can be dangerous, and as Don and Jeff gathered ice they had chipped off the berg, the iceberg chose this moment to shed some on its own. After transferring the ice and water aboard and chipping off some ice to add to the water, I was ready for a taste. A chug of iceberg ice, maybe 1 million years old, with some iceberg water. That beats any bottled water you've ever tried. It's really
period of time each year that we get out here, maybe 3 or 4 weeks that the bergs are around, and if you get one that's relatively what we feel is safe, that we're comfortable with, we'll go and either get a bergy bit or cut a piece from it. But you have to be careful and make sure it's well grounded, because they can roll, and then the rest is history.
Although the sheltered waters of Notre-Dame Bay are the draw for cruising boaters, Chris and Don thought we would enjoy a taste of the open Atlantic. So after departing the iceberg, we cruised along the north shore of Exploits, heading for the open water. As we passed a lighthouse high on the rocky shore, we asked Don about its history.
We're going by the Surgeon's Cove lighthouse here on the back of Exploits Island in Notre-Dame Bay. The lighthouse operated for, I don't know, in excess of 100 years, I guess. It closed about 3 years ago. It's solar powered now. Years ago, of course, there were fishing schooners and whatnot that would come in through, and there were practically no navigational aids in those times. And in later years, the paper boats going into Botwood and various other freighters would utilize this light, because it can get foggy and stormy and quite harsh out here.
Later in the show, we'll have more from Notre-Dame Bay in central Newfoundland. Welcome back to our visit to Notre-Dame Bay on the east coast of Newfoundland. After a brief run on the open Atlantic, Chris turned Safe Passage towards the rocky shore and into the entrance to Lower Harbour at Exploits. Passing through the narrow entrance, Chris not only had to be mindful of the rocks, but also of the floating lines marking the local fishermen's lobster pots, as Don told us about the harbour.
We're entering Lower Harbour, Exploits Island and Notre-Dame Bay. This is really the last, when you leave here, you're heading for Ireland. It's open sea outside of this. So we came in the back way, and there's a little choppy out there. So from here on in, it should be pleasant, more pleasant. And you'll see some of the old homes here. There are a lot of homes over 100, 150 years old, and there are some new cottages that cabin owners and stuff built over the years. But there was 1,000 people or so that, depending on to whom you listen, over the years, and they made a good living here, but it was a hard living.
Once in the main harbour, we headed to the stage at Don's cottage for some time ashore to marvel at the scenery and history of this quiet bay in early June before the summer cruising and cottage folks arrived. While his guests relaxed, we asked Don for his take on boating on Notre-Dame Bay.
So Exploits now today is the focal point, I suppose, of boating in Notre-Dame Bay. Notre-Dame Bay is a rather unique bay. It's 365 islands, they say, and I guess it depends on your interpretation of an island, what it is, but there are an awful lot of islands, and you can sail for a week and not visit the same coves and whatnot. So we're getting some marinas going around, smaller and bigger, and Lewisport, of course, is pretty well the central point on the northeast coast for boating, and on the weekends especially, this place will fill up, and we have moorings all around in different coves. I think the yacht club has a dozen moorings. There's communities of Sampson's Island that used to have 300, 350 people, now just cottages. Black Island was the same, and they're unique islands, all unique in their own right. Swan Island, so it's just unlimited the islands that you can go to. The big attraction for the boaters in this bay is the uniqueness of the islands. I mean, you can go and pull in anywhere or drop anchor, or you can go in, and there are wharves, fishermen's wharves, and you're welcome to all of them. Pick mussels, and there's a lobster fisherman around every second island that'll sell you lobster, and you can just cook them right on the rocks, sort of thing, and it's a unique experience.
While we waited out some of Newfoundland's changeable weather, we had an opportunity to speak with Clyde Jackman, the Minister of Tourism, Recreation and Culture, who joined us on Exploits.
This is the first conference of this nature that's been held to this extent, and I think that as a province we've been traditionally, the boating has been related to the work of this province, the fishing, but more and more we're seeing the recreational side of boating becoming, more prominent in the province, and as such, this group has decided to bring, associations, boaters, industry together to see what it is that they can do. And of course, I'm here as the minister to spoke at the conference today, and to see what role government can play in it. We're seeing more and more that the recreational boating, can be another aspect of our tourism development. We have many coves and bays and resettled communities, and the more that we can get people moving in that regard and investing in boating and spending money around the communities, well, it's better for the economy in the province.
Later in the show, we'll have more from central Newfoundland. Welcome back to PowerBoat Television and our visit to Notre-Dame Bay. From Exploits, we continued our cruise through the bay, visiting Sampson, Swan, and Birchie Islands in company with Tobin's Pint. One of the prettiest anchorages we visited was Western Harbour on Sampson Island. The entrance is narrow and you have to skirt some rocks, but the harbour opens up once you're inside. Here you'll find a small island with the best anchorage located behind it, as well as a few mooring balls placed here and in other anchorages by the Lewisport Yacht Club. Between Lewisport and Exploits, shelter and a good anchorage can be found in Benbrooks Harbour. As the afternoon progressed, we continued our cruise back past Birchie Island into Burnt Bay and on to Lewisport. Boaters cruising up the coast of Newfoundland from St. John's generally make the Twillingate and New World Island region their first destination in Notre-Dame Bay. Cruising and land-based tourists alike make Twillingate Harbour a stopover for whale and iceberg watching. A must-see, of course, is the old historic lighthouse on Long Point. From its elevated perch, the views of the Atlantic and waves crashing against the rocks below are truly spectacular. Boaters moving on to the Bay of Exploits, the most popular area in Notre-Dame Bay, normally choose to cruise south of New World Island and pass through Dildo Run, which offers a scenic cruise along a buoyed channel through a chain of small islands. One of the busiest recreational boating harbours on the bay can be found in the community of Lewisport. First settled in 1887, Lewisport was a thriving logging and shipbuilding community with a busy fishing and transportation port. While logging and shipbuilding have long since ceased, some fishing and the transportation link to Labrador remain, but recreational boating is becoming more of a focus for Lewisport and many Newfoundland outports. To help promote recreational boating in Newfoundland's outports, the community was playing host to a marine trade conference and to their first indoor and in-water boat shows. It was at the in-water boat show that we spoke with Tom Damrich, president of the National Marine Manufacturers Association, who had been on the cruise with us for his take on the area.
Notre-Dame Bay and Lewisport and all the islands out here is a very special place in the world. This is my first trip to this part of the world, and I got a chance to be out on the boat yesterday all day long, and it was absolutely fabulous. It's beautiful. I got to see an iceberg for the first time, and had a great time. And the people here are so friendly and so welcoming. I'd encourage anybody to come to Newfoundland.
Life on the Rock has always been a little bit rugged, so the boats designed and manufactured here are tough as well to handle the harsh environment. So we're more than happy to check out a few of the locally manufactured boats at the Lewisport In-Water Boat Show. The first boat we looked at was a Sea Serpent, and Dudley Burt was on hand to tell us about it.
This is our 20-foot bow rider, and the boat actually evolved from fishing boats that we were building back in the 80s, early 80s. And we've changed the bottom of it, basically. I gave it a shallow V, modified V, and a hard chine, and gave it some interior molding, and it's a runabout boat for mostly for the local market. This boat is built pretty easy to maintain, no carpet, easy to clean, and built rather tough. It's solid fiberglass. There's no cores. So we think it's a boat that is more doable for this market than say the dressed up ones that we get from other parts of Canada, really.
I also had the chance to head out on the water with an all-aluminum Silver Dolphin from Fabtech that proved to be an excellent and rugged performer with its twin 115 horsepower Yamahas. After testing out the Ocean Fisher, one of Yates Boat Building's custom working vessels for Oceans and Fisheries Canada, I asked George Yates what plans were underway to allow boaters from away to enjoy all that Notre-Dame Bay had to offer.
The last few years we had a bunch of visitors from away that came and enjoyed our region, and they've identified that there's not a bareboat charter business in basically all of Newfoundland, and I think in most of Atlantic Canada. So we wanted to provide that service, and we'll be providing all brand new boats, and we're planning on setting up a bareboat charter operation from there, and we're going to be chartering boats from 28 through to 36 feet, trawler style.
Recreational boating is not a big pastime yet in central Newfoundland, but from what we have seen on Notre-Dame Bay, don't hesitate to come from away to experience the paradise of these sheltered waters on the edge of the open Atlantic.